liking the sun.
Mm.
It's a reminder, I think, of just like, yeah, life is for living. Like, things are growing. Things are like, energy is being shared. I love it. I love
Awesome. It's
it.
awesome. I've been doing like, especially when it's been really hot, doing like sun rituals, because sun is
Beautiful.
bae. Like, sun is actual life for me right now. I'm also just so grateful for it, because can you imagine if it was, imagine if we were doing quarantine in winter, which we might actually need to face if they extend it for as long as they say they
I
are.
actually
They're going to
can't.
say December, but
Yeah.
I'm just so grateful that during this quarantine we've had the sun to worship, you know? So grateful
Although
for it.
it's like a balance, because like if it wasn't sunny, people would be less likely to go outside and spread the thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like we need something to get us through the lack of connection.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
balance also, and people's mental health, you know, like
Mm.
my love, my
Yeah.
community, loved ones, you know, I've really seen the impact of COVID on people's mental health, and just
Yeah.
being in quarantine, the lack of physical touch. You
Oh
know,
my God.
if you're tactile like me, oh
Yeah.
hey Shanice, I miss yours too.
We're gonna get into your energy soon.
You know, like just to be able to feel people, to like, if anyone's been to Our Naked Truths, you know, like we hug, we embrace. You know, it's so important to have physical touch, and to not have that. You know, it's been strange, and like I don't live with my mum, but I'm lucky that I live with my partner, and to not, when I go and see my mum, you know, like she's in her 70s, so she's like hyper vigilant about all of this, and she just, you know, not being able to hug her or touch her, or her smell, you know, those things are so, so important. But we give thanks. We are here.
Yes.
We are alive. We are healthy. We give thanks for that, you know. Thank you for having me.
Definitely. So I have obviously been a long time fan of Our Naked Truth. I've only been for 2 sessions and one Zoom, which I thought was awesome. The Zoom session was like really beautiful. I think everyone, because they were in their own space, they felt super comfortable.
So, oh, I'm back. My phone, my mum just tried to call me, so I can't do that.
Do you want to take it? Do you want to call her back? Or?
No, it's cool. It's cool. She's messaged. She just wanted to say hi. It's all as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I thought that the Zoom, the online Our Naked Truths was awesome, because everyone just felt really open, and like everyone was in their own space and comfortable. So I thought maybe it was it was a different energy in the space, but yeah, I liked it. So I want to hear. So we're going to talk about food in a little bit, but I want to hear more about you. I want to maybe give some background to everyone who's listening about kind of what you do, Our Naked Truth, and the inspiration behind it, because I think it's so necessary and needed. And I'll go into why I love it after you after you introduce it, because yeah.
Oh, that's really kind. Thank you so much for sharing that, and also just for coming. It means a lot, you know, to have people come into the space in varying degrees. And I know it was an online session, so that was also a bit weird and a bit different. It was different for me, but I was also so grateful that people were still willing to be vulnerable and open and honest. And there was a level of intimacy there that was just divine. So a bit about me. So as you know, I'm Joss. Really and truly, I'm just like a 36-year-old East London gal who heritage is Ghanaian, who is a lover of people, a lover of our journeys of healing. I'm a lover of the sun, and I'm a lover of art. And so I guess combining kind of all of those things, as well as like my own mental health journey and just relationship with my body, which it's been an interesting one, you know. I'm gonna put my finger, mama. Just where the lips are gonna deep, you know.
You have to.
Yeah, I'm a mental health advocate because of my own mental health journey, I guess, and also my own relationship with my body that has fed very much into my work. So I am a founder of a space called Our Naked Truths, alongside a few other things. And Our Naked Truths, for those who don't know, I can see some of our community in here already, which is wonderful. Hello. Our Naked Truths is a life art therapy series that celebrates the bodies and stories of femmes. And what we do is we centre people of colour. And it's very important that we get used to seeing our own bodies being celebrated, our own stories being celebrated, but it's also a fully inclusive space. We have our white allies that also come. And what we do is we meditate, and we have a muse who sets the theme based on what's been poignant in their self-acceptance journey. And I've been very lucky and privileged enough to have worked with so many women and femmes over almost a 4-year period, you know, so therefore we've covered a lot of stories, a lot of we've shared a lot of themes around self-acceptance, whether it's been facing physical disability, accepting different varying degrees of our mental health journey, reclaiming bodies after trauma, especially sexual trauma. That comes up quite a lot, which has been really insightful. Just how many of us have been impacted by sexual violence, letting go of fear, owning vulnerability, and practicing self-compassion, honouring our truth. Lots and lots of different themes. And that muse comes in, they set their theme based on what's been poignant for them in their journey. And then they model more for the first time. We've only had 3 models in 4 years that have modelled prior. Most people have never modelled before. And so they come, they model completely nude, and then they get drawn. They get to see all of these beautiful reflections of themselves, which is really important because, you know, a lot of the times we have our own thoughts around what our bodies look like, our own intrusions around what's not perfect about our bodies. But actually, more time, when you look at when you look at the artwork, it's almost impossible and virtually never happens that the artist is going to pick up or draw any of those insecurities. They rarely draw any of the things that we see in ourselves, the negative things that we see in ourselves. So it's really beautiful and really important for the muse to see all these reflections of their bodies, drawn so beautifully and adorned in such a beautiful artistic way. And then we ground ourselves, we come together, and the muse shares their theme and why that story, and a reflective story behind that theme. And then we invite the room to also share what they connect with. We are very blessed to have been operating for almost 4 years. We've taken the work from across the UK, which has been interesting, right up to Scotland and to Bristol and Cambridge and random parts of the UK. As well as being invited to New York to host sessions, and in Berlin. And it's just been really interesting seeing how we're taking this movement of collective healing around, and just hearing how a lot of our stories are interwoven.
That's what I get from the space as well, is that we're all seeing ourselves reflected. We're drawing ourselves, really. I think that's what I think. Yeah. That's
also a big part of it. It's really important. If we see, and also we're empowered. If we see somebody else sharing their body, we're empowered to share our own, but we're also seeing a direct reflection of ourselves, and the same in hearing our stories. But yes, in a roundabout way, that's basically what we do. What I've been really honoured to do. Yeah. It's a bit about me and my work.
Thank you for sharing. As I said, I've been to 3 sessions now, and I've been someone who I've had a bad relationship with drawing as a skill and with my body. So when my friend invited me to go, I was like, I can't draw, and like I don't want to see someone looking great and just like modeling and me being there like drawing her perfect boobs, whatever. I was like, I don't like. And then I came. And the way that you structured it is like it really mirrors like the narrative, like a healing journey. So we do like different time sketches. We do there's like pause, and there's moments for reflection, and there's like it's not you're not trying to be perfect. Like it's about expression, and I really like learning it. Like you don't have to be like good at things to enjoy them and like to put time into them, because I've only been to 3 of the sessions, and I would say even though they've been like sporadic over months, I've improved each time because because of the the realization of what I was actually doing and what the point of it is, what the point of this form of art is about drawing the energy from the space. And like if that specific person, that specific muse is the only person who can kind of bring that out of you. There's like a level of like vulnerability and power
Absolutely.
that I find just incredible.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And speaking of power, your energy is so powerful. Like you take up space in a way that very few women I've seen do. And in a way that, you know, Black women are not really allowed to take up space in that way. Like there's kind of like you walk with purpose. I'm just trying to figure out how you've got to that point of because I feel like when you're trying to step into your authentic self and you're trying to understand who you are and who you want to show up as, there's like kind of moments in that journey where you see yourself kind of changing. Did you always have this energy, or was it like a process?
Of course, it's a process, and I'm still on it, babes.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Thank you so much for your thank you so much for your observation and just for sharing that. That's really lovely to see and feel. So thank you. Have I always been like this? There are parts of me that have always been like this. I've always been someone who really wanted to encourage and challenge, encourage discourse, like really open discourse about our journeys. I wanted to talk about transparency. I wanted to talk about things that were happening to us. I always created space for people that I love to share, to find home in me in order to share. And I guess it's kind of been a part of my journey from a very, very young age. I guess it's been a part of me that's been a mother to some extent from quite a young age. But I guess in terms of being me, and I guess so many things that you said that was really wonderful. And I'm like, oh, really? You see that? That's really kind. It's been a journey, babes. Like growing up, a lot of people who knew me when I was really young, so like primary school, secondary school, would remember Jocelyn to be quite vivacious, quite loud, would be the life and soul of most parties, would be quite cocky. I was a bit rough with guys. So guys growing up used to be quite handsy. So you know, there's this whole thing, which is a whole other conversation. But as being a dark-skinned woman growing up, I think there's parts of us by society whereby our femininity is stripped away because you're darker skinned. And so therefore it was okay for guys to be more violent with me. Hey Cher, hey baby sis. It was okay for a guy to try and touch me up, even though there might be another sister in the space who might have a similar physique to me, but she's lighter skinned, so she's not going to get treated in the same way. And so from having those kind of introductions to guys from quite young, meant I was always fighting guys a lot, alongside lots of other things around relationships with guys and just the treatment of them. But then I think when I got to my mid to late teens, I was quite expressive, and I guess I would perpetuate a false sense of security when it came to my body. I was very much, some of my old school friends, my old school sister in them, would remember me as someone who, if they were coming up to check me, for example, I would open the door naked like it was nothing. And so they had this false perception that, oh my God, Jocelyn's so confident, so we're getting out her body, we're getting her tits out, all of this. But actually, what I was doing was very much what comedians do. So I actually had a very unhealthy relationship with my body. Very, very, very unhealthy relationship with my body. And I found that if I presented my body to you first, it didn't give you an opportunity to poke fun at me first. I've already presented it to you, so you can't laugh. You know, it was that sort of mindset, very similar to what comedians do. And so a lot of people thought I was extremely confident, but actually I had a really unhealthy relationship with self, body dysmorphia, didn't accept a lot of my physical self, and also navigated a lot with my mental health. So I was diagnosed with severe clinical depression at the age of 16. And then as getting older, through lots of different types of therapy, learning that actually I have PTSD. And so having to navigate some of that and understanding what that means and how it presents itself in my life has been a journey. And so I guess when I got to like my early 20s, and you know, so grateful for exploring psychodynamic therapy, having a sister in, I had a group, a sisterhood, and even though we were super different and had a different mindset around a lot of things, one thing we were there for was each other. And I guess coming from that helped give me a good foundation of what sisterhood was supposed to look like. And so when I hit my early 20s, and as you know, you go to university, you go to work, you meet lots of different people, and I'm really blessed to have people from different chapters of my life. And I started to form this second sisterhood, which was magnificent. In so many ways. But then what I also learned was it was actually really toxic, and it wasn't safe. It wasn't healthy. It wasn't safe. There was lots of jealousy, lots of insecurity. And I guess when it comes to the feminine journey, the social construct of gender has made us feel like there isn't space for all of us. Feel like we need to fight for individual space. And so in fighting for that space, we found it really difficult. What I learned was really difficult for us to actually hold space for each other from a place of compassion, integrity, love, trust, and honesty. And I guess that relationship completely broke down. And a lot of them were friends from some friends from different chapters of my life. Some of them I'm still friends with, some of them I'm not. And that completely broke down. And leading up to that point, I had a series of mini breakdowns in really unhealthy relationships, was in and out of therapy, and was exploring life art as a model, but still hadn't really tapped into it. And I was really lucky to have an aunt who would call herself my second cousin. She is technically my second cousin, but we Ghanaian out here. So you're an elder and you get called auntie. This is kind of how it is. And she was, in so many ways, hasn't no idea the impact that she had on my view of myself. She was an artist. She is an artist and a creative, but also she was a life art model. So I used to grow up going around to her home, a beautiful home in Chalk Farm, and see all of these paintings and artworks of her body. And, you know, she was seen as a bit of a revolutionary and a bit radical from a very conservative Ghanaian family who would kind of go into her home and like kind of look down, walking through the hallways, where I was like that. Wow, this is amazing. And she has like this rich, dark skin. I mean, I'm dark, but she is a lot darker than me. But she had a similar physique, and growing up seeing her body and seeing her adorn and own her body that wasn't there for titillation, wasn't there for sexual gratification for anybody else. And having these art pieces in celebration of her body always made me a bit curious about life art. And so when I was in my early 20s going through stuff, and I realized that I wanted to, in therapy, it kept on coming up like how trauma was living in my body. And how my trauma informed the way I viewed my body. And so I wanted to challenge that really and figure out, you know, in ways in which I could reclaim this body for myself, and look at it in a completely different way. And I thought life art would be a good way to do that. And so I had a chat with my aunt. She was really proud that I was going to get into it. She gave me a few tips and off I went, and contacted a few organizations and blagged my way into my first 2 sessions. Because I kind of said I'd done some work. I'd modelled for friends. I had never modelled for anyone, babes. I modelled for no one. And I was like, yeah, no, I've done sessions before. You know, I could do this. And so I went and did my first session with an amazing woman. I was really lucky, you know. She was an artist who was on her own personal mental health recovery. And she had a nervous breakdown and she was just trying to get back into drawing again. And so it was in her home, just me and her. And she played Nina Simone. She was burning Nag Champa for me. And she said, what we're going to do. Once I got there, I realized panic setting. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just going to tell her, this is new. Never done it before. First time. And she was really gracious and really kind. And she she kind of broke down kind of what she wanted from me, but said, actually, I just want you to explore, and we'll see where we go from there. And I was like, okay, cool. So she played Nina Simone, and she just asked me to dance.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, so that's basically modeling through movement. So I started dancing, and, you know, for me, movement is so important anyway, to connect to self.
Yeah.
And there's only a few moments in my life when this has happened, but I closed my eyes and I just got lost in the movement, lost in me. And that's the beauty of connecting to self through movement. It's like when God meets art and it speaks through you. That's kind of what it feels like. It's divine. And so I just danced for quite a while. I think it's about 10-15 minutes. And then she would slowly see something, see a position or a movement, and ask me to hold it. And so I would hold it for a couple of minutes and then would continue creating. And we did that for about an hour, and then we moved on to longer and shorter poses. And as the session continued, there was this unspoken dialogue between the two of us. It was me trying to make sure that I was as giving as possible, so she could receive me, so she could be inspired and continue to create how she needed to. And her, without saying anything, reassuring me and letting me know that this was good, letting me know that she was being inspired and that I was safe. And in a weird way, we kind of held each other from a place of vulnerability and solidarity, which was really beautiful. And then at the end, she just said to me, no, that was just what I needed. It was an amazing release for me to create with you, and said, this is something that I think you should do. You're incredible. You've got a beautiful body. You're so open. And then I saw her work and I was almost blown away. It's the first time I've ever seen my body drawn by anyone. And it's like the way she captured my body through the movement was just magnificent. I'd always have this thing about my cellulite and my breast being a certain shape and, you know, my stomach and all of these things. And that's not what was on the paper. And I'm not going to say everything transformed from then, but it was the birthplace of me going down the road of becoming a life model. And, you know, it wasn't easy. Like the second session I went to wasn't as intimate. It was a room of 50 people and I had no idea that...
From 1 to 50?
Right. I knew I was going to a class, but I didn't know it was going to be so packed. And it was at the book club. And I kind of came in and I saw these people and all my mental intrusions arrived. They just arrived with their bags packed, their chin, the embassy, they were ready. And I wasn't ready for them, especially in front of this room full of strangers. And I think it was just a lot of people, a lot of intrusions. I had no way of controlling it. And I ended up having an anxiety attack. So I had to remove myself from the space and gather myself for 24 minutes in the toilet. And I remember being in there and the artist came in to check up on me and I think he was a bit disappointed. And I was like, I'm really sorry. Like, it's the first time. I've never modeled before. And I'm just having to process all of this. And so I kind of managed to ground myself. And then I just made a decision that I'm going to go back out there. Whatever happens will happen, but I'm going to go back out there and model. And so I kind of reintroduced myself to the room and just apologized to them and said, you know, my name's Jocelyn. It's the first time that I've modeled in front of a room of people. And I kind of looked at the artist like, yeah, first time. Not what I said in my email, but it was. And, you know, and I just expressed, you know, I just had an anxiety attack, but I really want to present myself well for you guys. So please let me know if there is any positions that you need me to do, or just talk to me if you can't see something, or if you know, there's a position that isn't really working well, please let's talk and we'll explore together. And again, that became a really beautiful session. Again, an unspoken dialogue between me and the room. I kept on asking, I'd look for reassurance, is everything okay? And they'd be like, this is amazing. And there was silence. There was also music playing. I can't remember what. I think it was like some like neo soul vibes. But I just remember getting lost in each position. And if you've ever life modeled before, you know that you go into a bit of a meditative state. And so it felt quite healing. The mental intrusions that I had started to dissipate.
Good.
And I was able to be present and focused, and it was magnificent. And I think I did that for about six years. And as well as therapy and other tools, I realized that whenever I'd speak to another femme about what I did, they would always be like in awe or shocked. Oh, wow, that sounds amazing, but I can never do that. There'd always be something like that. And there'd always be a negative connotation or reason as to why they couldn't do it. And I know how much life modeling had really helped me reclaim my body and accept myself. Even though I was in a lot of white spaces, I was usually the only black person in a lot of these spaces. As a life model, you are booked as a model, so people are there to objectify your body. But I found it quite empowering. I found it quite liberating. I used it as a form of creative expression, and I wanted other femmes to experience that, even if it was just once, just to try it once in a safe space. And I think off the back of the experience that I had with this group of friends, I started to question what sisterhood meant. What did it really mean? What does it really mean to show up for others? What does it really mean to hold space for others? What does it really mean to demonstrate compassion? What does it really mean to listen? What does it really mean to sit with your own insecurities and still celebrate somebody else, you know? And I just thought if I could combine the space of allowing someone to come in and share their body and story, and also create a space where we could actually uphold what the true meaning of sisterhood is, wouldn't that be magnificent? And that has led me to Our Naked Truths and where we are today, which I'm forever grateful for. So I guess it's a continuous journey. I've learnt loads. I'm still learning. I'm still in therapy. I'm still exploring parts of my trauma. I'm learning how to mother myself and nurture that inner child who will present itself when I'm emotionally triggered. I'm like, oh shit, I'm still processing that. Okay. You know, cultivating real friendships with people that align with who I am, who celebrate me and who I can celebrate and support, know that I can be held, cultivating community. Being in a relationship has also been a part of that journey, because it's not all roses. When you are in real love, that person becomes your non-confrontational mirror and says, hey, do you know that you do all of this, but I still love you though? You know, have to face your dark side.
Love is important.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love you.
I love you. Yeah. You know, all of those things, having to make peace and forgive people who have done you wrong in your past, still love and forgive family members and accept that they may not change. You can only control how you navigate it, you know. Building connections is so important.
Like everything is about how you react to things. You can't control else beyond that.
Absolutely. So there's been a few things, like delving into my healing and also trying to connect with the elements more, being around nature, you know, tapping into the new moon. We're still in the third day of our new moon in Gemini, and sun rituals, exercise, and constantly being curious about my journey and my mind, you know. I'm still trying, babes. It's not all perfect, but I'm still here, you know.
Yes, you're doing amazing. You're doing amazing, sweetie.
Hey, Sam. Amanda. There's family all up in here. It's so cute. But yeah, that's your question.
I was just thinking, I was like, I have to ask you any questions because you're giving me everything that I need. Everything that I wanted to ask you, I'm like, okay, tick. We're going through that. I think, like, sisterhood is such, we all carry so much history with that, with playing that role, being a sister, to blood or to your friends. And it requires different things at different times. Like, we're in a moment where sisterhood is seen as, like, through a capitalist lens. It seems very white feminism, like girl power, etc. Without kind of the actual showing up for people, accepting people. Sister Woman, the name is from a poem by a Jamaican poet called Azika Simba, and the poem starts as sister woman, talk about the pleasure, talk about the pain. We need to be able to to lean into both of those things and to be held.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
Love that.
like I think it's definitely like it's a bucket list for me to model some feet. Like just like bucket list is okay. Not quite ready yet. Not quite ready. Not quite.
I'm waiting, babes. I'm waiting for you when you're ready. We have a space for you.
But I think it's such a like connecting to your body is such a key part of healing. So I was talking on my personal account this week about exercise and movement and how that's really helped with my mental health and kind of connecting my body and reminding myself that I'm living in this, like my body can do things and that's what it's there for. I mean, it's a productive space, even like separate to this idea of productivity, of capitalist productivity. My body is doing things just by being still. It's keeping me alive, and that's like that's like what I was talking about on my other page. But it's really interesting that you talked about kind of this connecting to your body, at also kind of connecting to your body and realizing like the power of it. So like what a movement, how that changes the energy and how that changes the message it's expressed in. And I just did a swimwear campaign, right? Which is I've never modeled before. And I had to do it in my house because of COVID. I had a breakdown. I gained weight during lockdown. And I hadn't really realized, And so I was put on the swimsuit. I was like, oh, they're paying me to model this thing, and I can't do it. I cannot do it. And then I was kind of like, why can I not do it? They know what I look like. They've like I had to like sit with myself and like think about why, what I didn't like, or what was in my head. And it was kind of, like I said, this intrusive thoughts of things that didn't actually like matter. Like what I noticed when I was like doing the modeling and kind of framing myself and kind of like really connecting to how I wanted to be seen, but also kind of contrasting with like how like my initial way of looking at myself. So when you say you're looking at the drawings, you're like, wow, like I don't even recognize myself in this thing. Like we have to try so hard to combat like those intrusive thoughts, and because those are the first things that come. You have to dig deep to find the love and the joy, which I don't understand. We've constructed these beliefs about ourselves, and it was kind of like I really realized that my idea of beauty, for me to not fit myself into it is crazy. Like that's an act of violence against myself.
Absolutely.
Because our obviously there's a conventional beauty, but your personal ways of seeing that and framing that, and for it to exist outside of myself, I was just kind of like, what do you mean? Of course I'm beautiful. What do you mean? Because what does it mean to not have that connection to your body, not have that that understanding of like of how to care for it, not just physically but emotionally. I think we talk a lot about mental health and physical health, and they're separate, but not the emotional and mental part of looking after your body. It's kind of seen as two separate things, and there's like a lot of emotional labor that goes into looking after your body and your physical self. Which brings me to food, because we are Africa. People ask me why I keep talking about things that aren't vegan food, and for me, I started my business as a way of healing myself. I started learning about food, learning about wellness, learning about pre-colonial ways of healing on a mission to like get back to that 6-year-old self, get back to someone who connected to, like you said, to nature, to the natural world, to outside of themselves. And for me, like, wellness and healing it's holistic. It includes all of it. It includes, especially as Black women, because to be able to choose what we eat, it seems like a lot of agency and a lot of understanding about kind of what we need as Black women. And I don't think that conversation, this conversation is definitely happening, and they're happening in beautiful spaces like yours, but it's not a kind of we haven't got to a point where we understand that it's different to white women, that it's different to like in terms of what we eat, in terms of what we how we move, in terms of kind of the way that we look after ourselves, the way that we the way that we kind of do that practice is different. And comes from I was wondering kind of if you could go into a little bit of your self-care practice and like with regards to food. So kind of I really loved that you had Mutulu Tanika at the event, that you considered the nourishment across like holistically. You considered, you know, what will elevate the space, what is part of healing, and I just kind of wanted to hear your thought process, also like your relationship to food. How would you describe it? How would you kind of how do you relate to that aspect of life?
Interesting. It's as when you were saying, as you were speaking about kind of your journey and your relationship with food, it made me start to think about where it all began. And it has changed, because food is definitely a part of my self-care practice, for sure. But the way that my relationship with food has evolved has looked so different over time. But I guess where it began was definitely through, obviously, my mother, who was an amazing and is an amazing cook. And so I've always had access to really good food from home. I'm Ghanaian heritage. So even though like my mom would cook like fufu and groundnut soup or jollof or chofi or kenke and snapper or kenke and mackerel or kenke and fried fish. Oh, it's my cousin Kingsley. Hey, my love. So we always had good food at home, but at the same time, my mum would always, she had like a really diverse palate, was very interested in making sure that her children had a diverse palate as well. So she would cook Italian food, she would cook French food, she would cook English food, she would cook British food. So mum was always making sure, as much as making sure that we understood our home foods, if there was fufu, she will also be making roast chicken and roast potatoes. You know, like we had it both. So it helped to have for me to have a diverse palette, especially growing up in East London. And my mum, single parent, worked really hard, but naturally it takes a village, right? So we had, as well as like my aunts and uncles who used to kind of support, hey Nad, say my love. Who used to support and help raise me and my younger sister. We also were looked after by white nannies as well, which is quite interesting because there's quite a few of us for a certain generation, especially between the 80s and early 90s, who came from West African parents who were working 2-3 jobs at times and needed someone in the local community to look after children. You couldn't always go to another black person because they were also in the same boat as your parents. So I had white nannies. And it was really interesting because of the setup I had at home, always having access to good food and a diverse palette, eating with my white family members, I call them. It was really interesting because the food was very different. It was obviously more European, more British, and the quality was also a bit different. Not the same quality as you would get at home, but it also meant that I would eat it. It meant that me and my sister would eat because we knew that we already had a good palate, so we knew that we could eat quite a diverse range of food. So we would eat, but it also meant that we were not snobs, but we had a certain standard when it came to food. When I got to like my preteens, my relationship with food changed. I always loved fruit and loved good food. But then when I got to like my preteens, and I guess this was definitely in connection with how other people saw my body. When bullying started to happen through some family members and also local community and school. I've been the same height since I was 12, so I was always quite tall, and I had big Ghanaian batty and thick thighs from young, but back then it weren't seen as cute until you were like in your late teens, innit? In your preteens, you're just seen as fat or awkwardly shaped or more masculine. And so that started to have an impact on my relationship with food. I noticed I wouldn't eat as much. I would try and diet. I would do a lot of exercise. I would go through phases of dieting or binge eating really late, because I was also like, me and my younger sister, we were very academic growing up, so we would study late at night, and so I'd end up binging late at night. And then when I got to like mid-teens, that changed again, because naturally my body was changing. My body was becoming more accepted. I still had this diverse palate, and I was also still quite snobby, even though I was developing a bit of a weird relationship with the frequency of meals that I would have. The quality was always high. If I was going to eat chicken and chips, I had to go to the wickedest shop for the chicken and chips. Like if I was going to go to the Chinese, big up Sweet and Sour, which is no longer there in Bowie Tree, Devon's Road. That was the Chinese place. That was a spot. I wouldn't just go to any Chinese spot. I had to go to the best. And when it came to junk food, I think in my like teens, especially when you're in secondary school and chicken and chip culture comes in, takeaway culture is a bit more part of your life because you're on the roads, you're out and about like I was. I became selective about the takeaway, but I was eating way more takeaway. But my body was changing. I wasn't getting bullied as much from from the way my body appeared, because now guys are starting to find you attractive. Now big batties were in, but at the same time, my bum was still sexualized, but at the same time, I wasn't deemed as attractive because I was dark skinned, but I had a nice body, and guys want to touch me up, but you wouldn't want me to be. It was very strange. So it was interesting that it started to change the way that I was. It was impacting the way I was viewing my food as well. Like I'd eat on the roads, but I would eat a certain type of takeaway, and I wouldn't eat too much of it. I'd try and preserve it for later on. It's a bit dysfunctional in some ways. But then as I kind of got into my early 20s, and especially when I moved out at 17, so I moved out quite young. And then when I hit 19 and early 20s, obviously cooking for myself, I think I started to really think about what was going into my body. I started to really think about it. I didn't rely so much on takeaway. I wanted to, obviously money was a factor as well, but I wanted to make sure I was preparing meals that were nutritious. I was trying to emulate the standard that my mum had set. And there was an importance of creating meals that felt like home. And so I think that's really where self-care came into my relationship with food, because then there was this nostalgic element of trying to recreate that feeling of home that mum had set, but also trying to make sure that I was thinking about my nutrition, and that I was being healthy, because around that age I also started to train, so I was in the gym quite a lot. That kind of was my thing for almost 10 years. And so I started to think about the way that I ate my food and what I was preparing, and got really into cooking, and still has. And that's kind of stayed with me. That's kind of stayed with me. And even now, like, I live with a partner, and, you know, as much as he loves my cooking, I'm so grateful that he also loves to cook. And so for us, when we eat together, to me, it's like a communion. It's an opportunity for us to sit together, put the phones down, let's connect, let's have communion. It's an opportunity to nourish myself. I actually view the way I'm eating as nourishing myself. And yes, you know, some days fish and chips, but also some days I have to have vegetables. I have to have fruit in my diet in the day. If I don't have it, my body physically craves for it.
Only 40% of Black people in the UK have 5 a day. 40%.
Wow.
Compared to 50% of white people.
Wow.
Yeah. So even the white is shocking, but that bigger difference, that's something
that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because actually, when you think about like Africans and Caribbeans, and you think about our foods and the resources and the foods that we have, they are fruits and vegetables. You know, they are fruits and vegetables. They are yam, they are plantain, they are beans, they are spinach, they are, you know, it's really interesting that, really, really interesting. But yeah, so I guess now, like, food is very, very important to me. If I haven't eaten well that day, it definitely impacts my mood. I can feel it in it. Usually if my diet is bad, it's usually because I'm not taking care of myself, which is usually a reflection of my mental health at that time. So yeah, for me, food is nourishment. Food is life. Fruit and veg is life, babes. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm so grateful for like people in the community like Mutulu Botanica, who has blessed me with so many herbs over the years. And now like I've got my my sea moss jar. I've been using sea moss for about a couple of years now, but she has produced a sea moss jar that also features berries, and so I have that every morning with like my chia seeds and my hot water and lime to alkalize my body and set the day. Yeah, man, food. I'm so grateful that we have access to foods. I'm so grateful for it. Very, very important to me.
This lockdown has been really like revealing everyone's relationship with food. Like everyone's kind of either really stressed out about it or really, really enjoying this time. Like they have the time now to actually focus on their food, which is so like, yeah. Everyone has their. I think it's about home, like recreating home on a plate. And I think that we forget that. I'm not forget, but people's relationship with food like starts from that. Their relationship with home, their relationship with their. You know, you talked about your mum is the person who started your relationship with food, and it's like definitely, especially with femmes, it impacts how you see that. As you don't see it as nourishment. I think some people see it as fuel, which I think like kind of takes away the joy. So you said about fish and chips. That's an inner child thing. I see that as you know, you like. If it's every Friday, maybe not. But if it's indulging that inner child, that desire, that is self-care. That is part of self-nourishment. It's so interesting the different ways that we all kind of engage with food. And I'm trying to really work out with a system and trying to figure out, how do we construct our relationship with food without centering like weight loss, controlling our weight, or controlling or like having to deal with fat phobia as the other part of that. Then also, like you said, it is a nourishment. It is when you start your day with lime water or lemon water and the sea moss, which I've run out of sea moss and everywhere is sold out, and I'm very upset.
Really?
Yeah, I live in West London, so it's really hard anyway to get it here. So
that's sad to me to hear that. There is so in East London there's definitely sea moss. There's strange like there's this Cockney guy in Stratford that sells it, but also on Amazon.
Yeah, I don't want to buy it. I can buy it online.
I know.
I'm just waiting for St. Lucia to stock up again.
But worst case, if you want that ready-made goodness,
I know.
Mutulu Botanica's got you, babes.
Yeah.
Like,
I use it too much to buy it ready-made. Do you know what I mean?
I hear you.
I haven't the budget yet.
Yeah, I hear you. Because you're obviously to use it for face masks. Your food. Yeah. But you can actually use, because I ran out until. So I ran out. So I had a batch that I had made when Mutulu gifted me this jar. And so I had boiled, like I'd already had my batch boiled, like watered down, blended, ready in the fridge that I was using, because I used that as my face mask. And sometimes, like if I didn't want to have any berries, then I'll just have like the plain sea moss with my lime water and chia seeds. But I then ran out of that, and so I actually used the other day. I started using the sea moss with the berries on my face, and I thought, oh, it's got berries in it. Is this going to give me a rash? But babes, it's been all right.
Yeah,
like, it's actually been all right. I hear you, but it's like when, and I was lucky after that then to be able to purchase a batch from Stratford. I'm just saying, worst case, if you need that good, she's got you, babes. Like, she's got you.
I'm gonna order one probably. It's that like I can afford that more than accidentally getting COVID by crossing London or spreading it. I don't know. Yeah, let's. But yeah, so I think it's really kind of refreshing to see these kind of alkaline, African-centered, pre-COVID like ways of looking at like using herbs, using things like sea moss, using things like I don't know. What's it like? People use yoni steams. People use crystal healing. Things that are like our birthrights, right?
Yeah.
And it's. I really hope that what we're seeing is a return to to these practices, because I think that we're so conditioned to see stuff like that as pseudoscience, as kind of like things resigned to the bush, and that's it, and that's not for us, and it's really disappointing, because herb medicine has helped me more than any other medicine has. Holistic healing practices have helped me more than, and this is me personally, medication helps people, but medication they put me on, that they wanted to put me on straight away with no kind of communication, to do conversation, was just like full of side effects, full of kind of like, you have to just keep taking it, and there's no like, I remember when I my iron was low, and I asked the doctor, I was like, what can I do to raise my iron? He was like, just take the pill. And I was like, no, like lifestyle change,
no nutritional advice, no,
and I was like, that means that I'm just taking this pill for when the rest of my life, like the rest of my, I think, what I'm noticing is things like that, like we expect things to be shown to us in a certain way. So what I found is that people really reject things that seem hotep, quote unquote, or archaic, or basically things that they don't understand. But I think that like it's so refreshing to be in spaces like our Naked Truths and have those so visible. And so, you start with meditation, you start with incense, you start with all these different things, and they're it's a way of normalizing that practice, because it's effective.
It is effective. It's interesting when you talk about kind of our relationship with holistic healing, and it seems like the pseudoscience, and also it seems very whitewashed as well. There are more white yoga practitioners than there are people of color. I think what we forget is when it comes to holistic practices. Now, I'm not out here pretending that I'm Earth Mother, and like I wear my shoes are made of paper. I'm not out here pretending that. Like, I'm definitely wearing leather. I'm wearing my Adidas sliders right now. Like, capitalism.
As a vegan, no comment.
Yeah. I'm not even vegan. I just eat well. I'm a pescatarian, but at the same time, I'm just like, we have to remember that when it comes to these holistic practices, whether it's through meditation, whether it's through veganism, whether it's through yoga practice, Pilates, whether it's through yoni steaming, and just different holistic practices of how we can heal ourselves. A lot of that comes from us, even the sense of collective healing. Like, it's really interesting. I was having discussions with like Black people around mental health, because I said before, we
are 15 seconds remaining. Yeah, I know. But we're gonna do, thank you everyone for watching. If you have any questions, send them to me, and I'll get them to Jocelyn. But we'll continue this and share this later.